Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beyond the Hire podcast, where we dive into recruiting for the go to market space, what it takes to build winning teams, and how industry leaders got to where they are today. We are very lucky. Today, we are joined by Morgan Mackles. He is the head of sales at Alix, a company that helps families settle estates with expert guidance and compassionate support, simplifying probate paperwork and asset transfers. Morgan is a revenue leader with deep experience building and scaling go to market teams across AI, enterprise software, private equity, and financial services. Before Alex, Morgan was VP of sales in private equity, where he helped scale the business from zero to approximately 300 million in AUM. Before that, he held sales leadership roles at X.AI, which was acquired by Bizabo, and Iron.io, which was acquired by Oracle, big companies. At Alex, Morgan leads customer acquisition and the sales organization with a focus on building a scalable, empathetic, and disciplined sales motion for a category that touches families, advisors, attorneys, and financial institutions. That is a mouthful. You have done quite a lot. Thank you for being here, Morgan.
Yeah, Sandra, that was really well said. That was good summary. It's like 25 years of my life they're flashing before me.
Oh my gosh, it's a lot. It's a lot. So it's a lot for us to dig into. 25 years in a career. Let's chat about it over the next 30 minutes. And especially, obviously, what you're building at Alex. So you started your career in the traditional kind of Fortune 500 sales environments. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you ended up at first ADP and then Quest?
Yeah.
And then why you decided to move from ADP to Quest?
Yeah. Okay. So even a backstory to that, which is I graduated during one of the pretty bad recessions, the dot-com kind of bust recession. And so that I was supposed to have in finance, it got rescinded, me and a lot of my colleagues. And I actually had kind of no plans and nowhere to go. So I moved to Sun Valley and I found myself having to go door to door to companies there to try and find a job. And I ended up taking a job. It's like the second place that I cold knocked on the door. This incredible founder named Dick White that I still remember so well. And was starting up a startup business. And he said, "Hey, you seem great. You seem really young and energetic. I have good news. I have bad news. Good news is I have a job for you. You're going to be selling our software product. The bad news is I can't pay you anything. I can't hire you as an employee. You only get commission. So you're just going to like sell on commission, no base, no benefits, no nothing." And it was just way more exciting than the other stuff like ski lift operator that I was finding out there. So I took that job and found that I really loved sales and I really loved getting paid for the energy and effort that you put in. So that was my first sales job ever. That was a really great experience. So I actually did that for almost a full year. And then what happened from there is that's where I started meeting recruiters who gave me some really good advice. The story for kind of Quest and Counsel and all of the medical stuff was my dad is a doctor, and I knew that medical device and that kind of industry was interesting. And so when I was talking to recruiters said, look, if you want to get good jobs in the medical industry, what you need to do is you need to go to companies that have very proven sales training processes and that are very well known for pumping out good salespeople. And that is how I found ADP, which has a reputation as being an amazing training grounds and just a really rough job. So a really rough job. But they spend 6 months training us. We spent a month in New Jersey at corporate, kind of back and forth. And then they have a long training program that really teaches you the selling fundamentals. And then they kind of throw you out into the field, like literally door to door with process and just trying to sell there. So ADP was a specific choice because of that training program and because of the legitimacy that it kind of gives you in your career, because everybody knows there's only two paths at ADP. You're one of the best and you hit President's Club, and then you can write your own ticket, or you hate it, fail out, don't do well, get cut, and run away. Everybody knows that.
Should I ask which path you took?
Yeah, yeah. I did very well at ADP, and I have nothing but love for ADP, amazing relationships. 2 marriages came out of my group of friends at ADP.
For a second, I thought you were telling me you had two marriages that came out of
No, no,
ADP.
no, no. I mean, so yeah, but you just get incredibly tight, right? It's sort of like that trauma bond sort of thing. And ADP is famous for it. And of course, it was great advice I got from the recruiters. Great advice, because getting that kind of really solid fundamental sales training where they're really teaching you about just the basics of selling, steps of sell and sales motion, pipeline fundamentals, outbound, inbound, incredible fundamentals that I would recommend to anybody. I just think that gave me a really solid background. But then, yeah, once you hit your president's club, you're ready to go. And that's what led me into the medical space. So, lab testing and diagnostics, specifically genetics. And the interesting stuff about ADP and Quest was just seeing what Fortune 500 companies are like when you're like at the low levels. And I'm really glad that I got those experiences so I could kind of see what those types of thousands of employee companies are like, because my ultimate goal was to move into startups, which I did after Quest. So that was kind of all of the things that I learned about that were relevant to my career from being at two really big companies, but especially, yeah, just the value of regimented training programs and just getting that really good foundation from day one.
You were at Quest for 6 years, which is a very, very long time. Is there a specific reason why you chose to stay that long? And then also why you said, I'm out now?
I loved it there. I loved working with the doctors. I was learning a ton. My territory and my kind of my job responsibilities got larger and larger. I got really into genetics. I have some genetic disease disposition in my family background. So it was a really interesting subject for me. And it's just fascinating stuff. And it was really cool because I got to see the impact that you had, not necessarily on individual patients, but we were working with really cutting edge offices, especially IVF, OBGYN, like some of these practices were really helping people. And yeah, I got promoted to a GET, so a genetic and esoteric specialist role, so like a genetic role. And that was fun because I was the youngest one that had that role. It was a very prestigious role, amazing people. A good amount of the people that had that role were actually nurses or had something to do with medical in their past career. So I was very honored to have that. It was great. And then I helped, it's basically like an overlay role, sort of like a sales engineer role, but for genetics. And so I was really proud of helping my team. My team became one of the top teams in the country. And then we actually had the number one rep in the country, was one of my reps. That was really special to me. And in fact, she had come back from, she had taken a year off, beat cancer, and she came back and said, Morgan, my goal is to become the best. I just want to be the best. Like, I'm back. I beat something really hard. Now I want to do this and I want you to help me. And we crushed it. And that was one of the greatest things in my career. And actually, I think that that was probably an important aspect of why I started getting into management, because it's really gratifying and validating when you can help someone achieve greatness. It's one thing for you to be good at what you do. That's great. But can you build up other people around you? Can you build up a group? And ultimately, a super important skill anywhere. But at startups, every manager is so important. You're really a high leverage rate multiplier, especially startups.
Yeah, something I always hear, I myself wholeheartedly agree with, is people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad managers. So to have a manager, even in a gig, maybe that's not the right one for you, but to have a manager that supports you and believes in you, I think's all the difference.
So, Sandra, I'll tell you a funny story. Is my dad is a psychiatrist, right? And so he's dealt with so many people in their careers. It's a huge aspect of what their concerns are in life. And he told me a long time ago, like, hey, manager's really important because you could be at the best company, you can have the best job, but if you don't vibe, if you don't get along and feel supported with your day-to-day manager, you're miserable. And so just remember that. And so I think he told that to me more as an employee to watch out for that. But now that I've been a manager for 15, 20 years, I think about that all the time. I don't want to be that manager at a great company where people are, except my manager's no good.
I like the perspective and that obviously that your father has a profession. How do you make sure you are that manager that people do appreciate and feel supported by and feel seen by?
Over the years, I've sort of intentionally kind of built up the EQ skill set, but fundamentally, what was natural to me was to just be myself at first. So I'm a big lead by example person, right? Every company I'm at, when I come on as a manager, I always want to make sure that I try to do each job for a little while. And, it's not just practical, but you really have to live in the shoes of everybody that you're going to manage. That's something, at Alix, like I was literally an SDR and I was literally an account executive. So we can talk more about that later. But I think that first live the roles, set an example, work really hard, and then from there, building out systems and processes to make everybody's life easier. Because once I'm in there and I understand what's going on, my job is to basically empower my sellers, right? And kind of get out of the way and help them get everything else, all the other abstractions and distractions out of their way. Those are the kind of the parts of being a manager that were natural to me. The parts that I've worked on in my career are more kind of the EQ and understanding how to manage different personality types. Not everybody is like me. Like I'm super type A, kind of hardcore. I'm like a 12 hours a day kind of guy. And so understanding how to kind of adapt to different working styles, different personalities, different situations. Obviously, right? There was COVID. You have remote teams. You have on-site teams. There's all sorts of things that are. I don't think they're natural to anyone, but for me, I had to kind of go out of my way to learn and take classes and trainings for to really up my game on the EQ side. Because like the work and all of that has always come naturally to me, but managing people, I'm constantly learning and constantly getting better.
I like that answer because someone I think who claims they already have it all together and just know how to do it, it's hard to believe. But the fact that you're constantly still educating yourself, I think is amazing. I'm not necessarily someone who believes in like coaches for everything, but I do think, an executive coach is something that's incredibly valuable and very nice for any company to kind of offer its executives, or even if the company doesn't offer it, for, someone to go out on their own and just find ways to keep educating themselves. All right. So it sounds like you had something really magical at Quest, an incredible team, and incredible sellers. So, what made you decide to leave? Why did you think that's the right next move for me?
Well, I always wanted to get into startups, but what I kind of realized in retrospect, maybe I knew this at the time, maybe I didn't, but a really good way to advance in your career is instead of jumping to like a whole new universe and expecting people to just love you and hire you, is kind of to take steps that are a little bit more not sideways, but incorporating your current skill set, your current expertise, your current Rolodex, your current relationships, but then moving more towards where you want to be. So, what I did instead of jumping into a tech startup, even though maybe somebody would have hired me, what I did is I leveraged my expertise in genetics and I went to a genetics startup called Counsel. And so, what was great about that is I would be selling into very similar offices. It'd be selling into very similar types of testing that were basically to help pregnant mothers, help families trying to get pregnant. That was my first experience in like a heavily ventured back startup. So that was Counsel. And when I arrived, they had just raised $100 million round from Founders Fund. So that was exciting. That was fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I had the whole Bay Area is a huge market. And that was an amazing experience, just being a part of that growth and understanding what it's like to be at a venture backed company. And by the way, since then, I just never went back to Fortune 500.
So we have a lot of listeners who are still trying to figure out their careers. And I myself also always think this is very interesting. For the past few years, I've been at venture backed companies, but I haven't necessarily worked at a Fortune 500 where the way of working is so entirely different. So I'm always curious, is the grass greener on the other side, or am I perfect where I am? And I'm sure every single person who hasn't experienced both wonders. What made you like tech startups better? And what kind of person do you think either option works best for?
For me and my style, I'm just always thinking about how to do stuff better, how to do stuff differently, better, faster, more efficiently. I don't believe in the work better, work smarter. Like you have to do both all the time. And so startups are a perfect ground for that because you're at a much earlier stage and much more flexible. You have much more impact on the organization. And even when I was an IC in my individual roles, I was always asking why? Why do we do it that way? Why can't we do this? And I was always doing outside of the box things. I remember like making entire Excel sheets out of my territory and analyzing movement over time and all this stuff that like nobody was really teaching us. And I was like, why not? Why aren't we? And I would show other people and try to help them out. And in startups, that's just natural. That's expected. In fact, you won't survive and thrive without individual employees having autonomy and being able to really contribute. And then the just scale of your contributions is just completely different. You can make an effect on your company that's just disproportionately valuable to everyone and you own equity. So it matters. And I mean, obviously we'll get to Alix, but that's a 10x growth in under a year. There's specific things we can point to that I've done, that other people have done on the team, like straight all the way down to my like AEs and SDRs who made individual contributions that has made everyone better and more effective. And you can see the result in a way that's kind of hard to see, Fortune 500.
It's interesting. And I actually like that answer. So, a couple of years ago, I was talking to my boss, and she said to me, we're talking about kind of types of jobs. And I said, a friend of mine works at Amex. She did marketing there, and she was responsible for just one email segment. And that was her whole job. And I was talking to my boss about it, how interesting that was to me, because my job is not just email, pretty much you name it, it's my job, or
Yeah.
it was back then. My boss literally said to me, she goes, "You would not survive there." She goes, "You're creative, you're a doer, you want to change it up every single day. Like, why not
Yeah.
like this? Let's do it like that without even asking for permission. More ask for forgiveness once you've built something new and everyone loves it." And I remember being somewhat offended by that. I'm like, why would I not be successful with Amex? But the way in which you explain it is very much different type of personality that fits kind of one type of company versus another.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. So probably not the best thing for on air, but one of my proteges who I'm like the most proud of, she joined me at two companies. I brought her in for her first sales job ever. She was just the best support, phone support at council at that startup. And now she is a badass enterprise executive at Google
Wow.
Cloud. She's so awesome. And I met her at one of the offices and did the whole lunch line thing. And I was like, oh my God, tell me what this is like. How are you? And she was just
Yeah.
like, you would hate it. You can't do this. You can't. Basically, like, I mean, no offense to Google and no offense to any company if they acquire us or whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, you have to fill out 80 forms to do anything. And like, it's just so slow. You're not incentivized, or they really don't want you to be too creative at an individual level. And that's just really hard. And I can even understand why. I even get it, having been at some Fortune 500s, because it's doing things at scale is really difficult. So sometimes the rocking the boat can be kind of hard, but that's not the best Morgan, I don't think.
Yeah, and I also, what isn't true now can be true in the future. Who knows? Maybe you and I in 10 years will be like, "Oh, that's the best gig ever." But for this moment in time, potentially not. But let's move on from council. So we already touched upon this in kind of the intro. You were the VP of sales at Iron.io, which was acquired by Oracle. Besides kind of making that move, I'm also curious, was it acquired by Oracle while you were there, or that happened later?
Right at the end, I was basically there. Oracle acquired the employees, and then there was a private equity firm that acquired the tech. Yeah, that was really great for me. That was my first role as a VP of sales. And it was also, that's my foray into tech. So it's sort of like I didn't jump just straight from Quest, having never been at a startup, never been in a leadership role, never been in tech. I kind of made the move over. Okay, now I've been in a startup. Now I'm growing up. Now I'm putting together revenue numbers that are really high. They're in the millions. So it's kind of earning those chops. And then I was an advisor to Iron before they were like ready for a real head of sales.
And what do you think made you ready to be a VP of sales? Like go from being an IC to being a manager?
They chose me to run their first pod, myself and then the New York rep, to run pods where we were kind of putting together in the tech model where we had an SDR, a CSM, kind of a sales engineer equivalent, and kind of running those. That pod was very much like being a manager. My genetics role, the overlay role, was technically a management role. So I also graduated from an entrepreneurship program at Santa Clara, which is where I also went undergrad. Man, I think all of those things kind of coalesced into me being ready to do it. And so, yeah, folks at Iron brought me on, and it was an incredible experience. So it was a great experience. And also, it was awesome being in Soma and being at Heavy Bit. So we were in an incubator space, amazing being around other VCs or other startups, being around VCs, and a lot of my relationships, a lot of the advisory roles that I've had over the years have come from that circle.
Very nice. And I want to get to Alex, but obviously there's a few steps in between still. You ended up at X.AI, which was acquired by Bizabo. Talk to me how you ended up with that job. I also know people are always very curious. Did you apply for it? Did people reach out to you? Did you use your network? How did you make that move and end up there?
Yeah, so with X.AI, the timing there was after Iron. The venture capitalists coming out of Iron, a couple of them reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're really good at this like early scale thing.
Yeah.
Have you considered consulting?" So instead of rushing into another job, I started doing consulting for early stage companies where the VCs felt like they weren't quite ready for head of sales, and sort of
Hmm.
come in and help get them grounded for that moment so that their head of sales doesn't have to start from zero. kind of like build up those initial revenue machine steps, which is something I did really well at Iron to help them raise their A. So that is when I started meeting some amazing founders, doing work consulting, and I actually approached X.AI. I got introduced to them for consulting. And so what eventually happened after we'd been talking for a little bit, I had flown out to New York once to meet the founders, Dennis and Alix. And what they said was, I met with them over Zoom or something, and they said, "Hey, so we have an update for you. We haven't announced it yet, but we raised the Series B, and it's big. It's a big Series B. So we're not interested in you as a consultant. We're interested in you full time. But here's the caveat: our executives are on site in New York. We believe in office, so you would have to literally pick up and move across the country." And yeah, just my personal life timing and stuff, it was feasible, and why not try out the greatest city in the world, right? You guys are obviously believers. So yeah, I went out there, and that was so cool because this was selling AI before LLM. So it's so interesting in retrospect. It was such a difficult problem back then. It was so hard to solve. And X.AI put so much energy, effort, money into trying to solve for our particular product. And I feel like the LLMs make it a problem that wouldn't even be difficult now. It's, yeah, fascinating. Timing is strange.
Yeah, because this was back in 2017, 2018. So definitely for those listening, quite a while ago. Do you think it set you up for success to understand how to utilize AI now in your go-to-market strategies?
Definitely, especially because Alex is B2C. And the
Hmm.
thing with X.AI is I was brought in to increase our sales of like our business pro enterprise plans. But the vast majority of people that self selected for X.AI were individuals, a lot of busy VCs, and we got a lot of administrators who would sign up. And so that was really kind of a really good training ground for when I got into finance, where you're only selling to individuals unless we're talking about partnerships and big banks or financial advisors. But Alex, in my current role, I'm talking to normal people about our products and incorporating it into problems that they have in their everyday life.
Very cool. And I see you did kind of a lot of like fractional advisor roles before you ended up kind of taking the full-time position at Alex, which I think is kind of a nice way to get to Alex. Why did you start at Alex and think this is my full-time role? I'm going to kind of move away from a lot of fractional advisory roles because I can imagine, again, speaking from my own experience, it's a lot of fun to get to peek under the hood of all these different companies and see what you can do, especially again, I think admittedly we've said we like to be creative, come up with solutions, build things from scratch. What made Alex different? And how did you get introduced to Alex? Also a great question.
Yeah, I've always liked being an advisor. I did a lot of consulting as well, where you're trying to help founders with efficiency, effectiveness, and I'm all about scalability and repeatability. So that's really kind of what I focus on, either when I'm actually a paid consultant or whether I'm getting shares as an advisor. I am really always trying to help bring that scalability and repeatability to my clients or to my companies. And so actually the role that brought me back from New York was in private equity. So that was my first time actually being in straight finance. And so I was the co-founder of a private equity firm, and we were able to grow from zero absolute starting days to about 300 million in AUM over the course of a few years. So that was an incredible experience and really helped ground me in the area of finance, which is what eventually led me to Alix, because what Alix is looking for, it lives at this unique intersection of AI and finance. And so what Alix needed and what Bets was really helpful in finding for them was kind of a unique profile that has their feet in both. Because what they were finding, to my understanding, is if they're interviewing pure AI folks, like SaaS motion sales folks, that's just not the right fit. It's just a completely different motion. Whereas if you interview straight up like financial services from big Charles Schwab or the kind of companies that invest in Alex, now you're too far on the finance side. So they don't really have that startup tech muscle. They don't understand super fast sales cycles. That was the reason that they were attracted to my profile, because I'm kind of in the middle and have experience on both sides. And then for me, what happened is as soon as I met our CEO, Alexandra Mysore, that was it. She's so passionate about this market, this problem. She's so inspirational. It didn't take too long for me for this to switch from something kind of interesting to look into to really understanding that Alix is a company that could absolutely be a force for years to come. And Alexandra just has an incredible vision. And now, 9 months later, I'm seeing it start to happen. It's incredible.
So you've gotten to peek under the hood of many different companies in many different capacities. So I think you're kind of uniquely qualified to help answer the question. And I've asked this, I feel like, of a few different guests. When you're interviewing at a company, what's a green flag that you know this is going to be an exciting opportunity? Because I think most of us have made bad decisions in the past, or maybe stayed somewhere too long, not long enough. How do you recognize a green flag?
Yeah, I think that I'm getting better as I get further on in my career and in identifying how important the relationship is between kind of a sales leader and the CEO.
Hmm.
You are in the trenches with the CEO forever. So that relationship is super important. And understanding that you guys are, I mean, all of my CEOs have been incredible, but how are they going to be when things are good? How are they going to be when things are bad? What do they believe in? What are they like? How do they communicate? What kinds of people do they choose for the other management roles and why? I think that that's incredibly important. And since I've kind of had that philosophy, I've gotten a lot of validation on that. I was just actually hanging out with one of my friends that's a VC who says that his favorite thing about AI is it's allowing way more time for him to do all the analytical stuff on the side so that he can just focus as much time as possible vetting the CEO. That's like all he does. He's like, that's my highest ROI activity is getting to know the CEO because being a CEO is brutal, it's intense, lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility, never lets up, really hard job. And I think that that's probably for me, that's the biggest indicator right now. That's what I'm really finding.
Interesting. And as you're a little bit more junior, you probably won't get a chance to necessarily sync or talk to the CEO as much as someone who's as senior, obviously, as you are. So, for someone who would be interviewing at Alex, how can they recognize it if they get to talk, obviously, to the vet's recruiters, but also to you, right? Because I say this when I'm on calls with our clients, and I always say it's a two-way street for us. We have to want to hire for your company, and you have to, want to hire our candidates that we introduce you to. But for the interview process, it's a two-way street too. I think so often people are so excited to get hired that they forget they have to, vice versa, interview the company as well, which is why I think sometimes we make bad decisions because we get so competitive with just getting the job. What do you think people who are interviewing at us or any other kind of company really should look out for if they're a little bit more junior?
People need to be very clear that when you're thinking about a job, that a job isn't a job, it's a step in your career. As a candidate, you need to be very conscientious about that choice. Probably any people listening to this podcast are like me. Like, if you're going to work, you're going to work. It's a lot of your time, energy, your heart, your mind. You better pick well and have some parameters. There's 100 things that I've learned to look for, but just on the same theme, you're right that like not everybody's going to be able to meet with the CEO at companies. I will say at Alix right now, right, our account executive role, as well as my management roles, the last round is Alexandra. She wants to meet all of those folks. And she sits, by the way, like 8 feet away from the sales pit. So she's around and interested at all times. That said, I think the best way, if I were to be interviewing 10 years ago at startups, I would be paying attention to the highest level of person and the managers that I'm talking to, evaluating their quality. Because what happens is the CEO chooses, like, let's say it's sales, the CEO chooses the head of sales, and I choose my managers. And what you want is that will be an indicator for you of kind of the level of expectation in terms of skill and talent of the managers. So, in choosing the managers that each level of leadership wants to represent them, that's a good indicator of what's actually going on with the people higher up the chain. Because I'm not going to hire a manager that I don't believe in. I just hired
Yeah.
my first manager from Bets. Good job, Bets. So the interview process, kind of what the rigor that I go through for that those people, those hires will tell candidates a lot about me and what they can infer about me and my background and my track record. And then getting to know me will tell you a lot about Alexandra because she's this great executive. That's something super important to look for if you're earlier in your career and you're not going to be meeting with the CEO or the head of sales.
So, what are the questions you ask, right? So, in hiring your managers, obviously you see several profiles, you get to talk to several people. What are the questions you ask? What are the stats you want to see, or the metrics, or how do they need to talk about the things they've accomplished prior?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that. So, I mean, my number one thing is I'm always trying to hire people that I've already worked with. So that's my cheat code. If I already know that they're good, then that's a great start. I really trust referrals from my network, right? It makes life so much easier than hiring people from scratch. In terms of just skill set and metrics, it's a truism that the best way to think about what future behavior is going to be like is to look at past behavior. So
Yeah.
you're looking at just like a resume. I'm looking for very specific stats. So dollars, percentages, ranks, those types of things at a glance. And then is the candidate able to articulate that? They didn't just have AI write that up for them. And then at that point, we move into like storytelling. So I poke around specifically about situations that are unique to Alix, where when I get past the superficial stuff of like, can someone sell? Then we're moving into some of the things that are really unique about the Alix sale. And there's a lot that's unique about what we do. And so I like to do kind of like behavioral questions around that, how they would handle certain things. And then we also have a candidate sort of take home assessment for every one of our roles. And one of the things that we really believe and lean into is you don't need to understand the state settlement and what this is. This isn't a quiz on like, can you go home and use ChatGPT? This come in and then walk us through your thinking. Talk to
Yeah.
us about how you would approach this scenario and why. And that can be very telling. So we're very into kind of that behavioral interview style. And that's always been something that I've been a big fan of as well.
Now, I do want to get into that you guys have grown 10x across both revenue and customers. Me personally, as a revenue leader, I'm interested in how you did that. And I'm sure if we have other VPs of sales, CROs, CEOs listening, they're interested in that too. What did you do? How did you dig in? I mean, you said you were an SDR, you were an AE. What was your process? Please give us the magic.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll just say it so that it can be said on its own. It's an amazing experience. The level of growth that we're experiencing here at Alix is something I've never actually been a part of before in my career. I've been a part of some very fast growing startups, but for a Series A company, I mean, it isn't like we got $100 million or something. Series A company to grow this much is amazing and it's really exciting. And so since I've joined Alix, we've grown 10x across both revenue and customers. So it's incredible amount of growth. And then also just that's created a huge demand across the team. So in terms of scale and growing out the team. So since I've started, I've hired 3 account executives through bets, 4 SDRs, and we're now hiring account executives 4 and 5, and we're looking for more SDRs as well, a sales development manager. And yeah, we're growing all the time. So really proud of that stat. I've never been part of a 10x growth at this phase. And it's really gratifying. And I think it's a good testament to kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like Alexander has put something really great in place and picked really great leaders to execute on our vision.
Is it the collaboration across kind of the leaders that has allowed for this growth? Or is it like a strategy, your sales motion?
It's a really unique sales motion. And so when I start, I'm always looking to build out process, scalable and repeatable process. And when I got here and I started with the sales team that was in place and the kind of processes that were in place, the first thing I did was live the jobs, right? So I acted as the SDR in weird off hours. I was calling people after the SDRs were done at night so that I could experience that SDR role and really understand what was unique about that process and try and break it down and build systems that would make the SDR's job easier, more efficient, faster. And in the case of the SDR, more important, we really escalated their role in terms of their responsibility and what they're going to do to set up the account executives to have successful calls. Then I moved on to the account executive role and had to experience the pitches, had to experience the objections, had to work with pre-call packets that were coming from our SDRs. And by living through that, also kind of changed that process into something that I thought would be more repeatable and more scalable, more coachable, more trainable, and have a higher success rate. And so I won't like give too many specific stats, but our close rates and our efficiency rates have more than doubled year over year. So taking process that was starting from a spot where I saw that there could be a lot of efficiencies built in, and getting those things taken care of as we slowly moved up and then scaling the team. And then in terms of like some specificity, we now incorporate a ton of AI. We're an AI native company. So our team incorporates a ton of AI into the pre-call preparation that our account executives do. So what we want in order to make the best experience for the clients that are going to be hearing about the product and going through their slide deck and their needs analysis. We want them to have the best experience possible. We don't want to waste any of their time. So we're using a lot of AI to basically analyze the conversations, the lead submission forms that our prospects are sending in. We're doing a lot of background research on their unique situation, the decedents, the state, the jurisdiction, all of these things that matter because our clients are coming to us at a really vulnerable time where they want information and answers. So what we're doing now that's different is we're getting all of our ducks in a row, and the SDRs are responsible for creating like a pre-call packet for the AEs. They spend 10, 15 minutes going over it before the call. It has a regimented and systemic format and use. And it's all being run by AI with simple prompts, or some of our stuff is just automated so that everybody can have the information at their fingertips right away. And I feel like that's one of the specific actions that we've taken that has really improved definitely our close rates and our efficiencies, because the account executive is much more informed going into the call. Also, the client spends way less time repeating themselves. They just get value out of the call so much faster, whether they end up moving forward with Alix or not, because we're trying to help people that are dealing with death, dealing with a loss. And so the more that we can help them out, the better it is.
All right. I obviously asked way more questions than I had intended to, but everything you say was really interesting. So I had to keep asking. So I'll end it with one final question.
Sure.
Someone listening to this call thinks that is exactly what I want to do. I want to work for Morgan. I want to join Alix. What is the one thing they can do to make sure that their interview with you is successful?
I really like when candidates have done a little bit of research. I think that it's easier than ever to do research now. You can learn all about me, you can learn all about Alix. I think that candidates that are not doing a little bit of research about the role and about me and about our company, they're just putting themselves at a huge disadvantage. Like, I'm just not going to hire anyone like that. I
Yeah.
will say, obviously, Ryan and Beth, you've done an amazing job. I've gotten amazing feedback about how you guys help prep candidates and make sure that they're a good mutual fit. But that's one thing, is I'm really passionate about my company, I'm passionate about my CEO, and we have an amazing story to tell. So I think that that's one of the things that candidates can do. And to your earlier point, Sandra, making sure that there's a mutual fit, because maybe you learn about the company and you're kind of like, either I'm not sure that there's a mutual fit, or, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then you relate it back. We have a bunch of employees who've gone through the death of a family member and have had to do trust administration or probate, and that will leave a lasting impression, or people that do research about those processes. Those are huge.
Thank you so much, Morgan. This was amazing. I can't wait for everyone to listen. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Beyond the Hire.